Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Read from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 2, Divinity and Divine Service. We're on text 6. 1.2.6. And this is a very important verse. This verse is directly an answer to one of the questions that sages of Naimisharanya asked earlier in the first chapter. They're asking what the supreme activity is. It's important to know. You have limited time. What do you do? What's the most important thing you can do? What should be my focus? So in many ways, this verse is considered like the thesis statement. If this Bhagavatam was an essay, this would be like the thesis statement. Jiva Goswami, well, I'll talk about that when I get into the class, but he says it's very important. So 1.2.6. Savai Pongsam Paro Dharmo Yato Bhaktirat Hokshaje Ahaitukya Pratihata Yayatma Suprasidati. Srila Prabhupada's translation. The supreme occupation, dharma, for all humanity, is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. Srila Prabhupada's purport. In this statement, Sri Suta Goswami answers the first question of the sages of Naimisharanya. The sages asked him to summarize the whole range of revealed scriptures and present the most essential part, so that fallen people or the people in general might easily take it up. The Vedas prescribe two different types of occupation for the human being. One is called the Pravritti Marga, or the path of sense enjoyment, and the other is called the Nivritti Marga, or the path of renunciation. The path of enjoyment is inferior, and the path of sacrifice for the supreme cause is superior. The material existence of the living being is a diseased condition of actual life. Actual life is spiritual existence, or Brahmabhuta existence, where life is eternal, blissful spiritual existence, where life is eternal, blissful, and full of knowledge. Material existence is temporary, illusory, and full of miseries. There is no happiness at all. There is just a futile attempt to get rid of the miseries, and temporary cessation of misery is falsely called happiness. Therefore, the path of progressive material enjoyment, which is temporary, miserable, and illusory, is inferior. But devotional service to the Supreme Lord, which leads one to eternal, blissful, and all-cognizant life, is called the superior quality of occupation. This is sometimes polluted when mixed with the inferior quality. For example, adoption of devotional service for material gain is certainly an obstruction to the progressive path of renunciation. Renunciation or abnegation for ultimate good is certainly a better occupation than enjoyment in the diseased condition of life. Such enjoyment only aggravates the symptoms of disease and increases its duration. Therefore, devotional service to the Lord must be pure in quality, i.e., without the least desire for material enjoyment. One should therefore accept the superior quality of occupation in the form of the devotional service of the Lord without any tinge of unnecessary desire, fruit of action, and philosophical speculation. This alone can lead one to perpetual solace in his service. We have purposely denoted dharma as occupation because the root meaning of the word dharma is, quote, that which sustains one's existence. The living being's sustenance of existence is to coordinate his activities with his eternal relation with the Supreme Lord, Krishna. Krishna is the central pivot of living beings, and he is the all-attractive living entity, or eternal form, amongst all other living beings, or eternal forms. Each and every living being has his eternal form in the spiritual existence, and Krishna is the eternal attraction for all of them. Krishna is the complete whole, and everything else is his part and parcel. The relation is one of the servant and the served. It is transcendental and is completely distinct from our experience in material existence. This relation of servant and the served is the most congenial form of intimacy. one can realize it as devotional service progresses. Everyone should engage himself in that transcendental loving service of the Lord, even in the present conditional state of life, of material existence. That will gradually give one the clue to actual life and please him to complete satisfaction. Jai.
Jai.
Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai.
Om Gana Tirandasya Gyananjana Shlakaya Chakshuranitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindhubheva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada says that the sages had asked Sutta Goswami to present the most essential part of scripture. This is one of the advantages of talking to somebody who's an expert in something. You get a download, you get the benefit of all of their knowledge really quickly. You know, if you think about how many years it takes to study something and become a master in it, anything, any topic. This is the principle behind TED Talks. You find somebody who's excellent at something and they're recognized as excellent by others in their field and they're consistent. And you'd be like, you know what? We want to hear from you. What do you think the world needs to know if you had a 60-minute platform? And you'll hear whatever you hear is a condensed form of wisdom. It's the essential, because that's the question. What is the essential thing for us to know who don't have the time to specialize in this? So the sages, who are actually all advanced in spiritual knowledge and recognizing they're not the body, and in various aspects of spiritual life, they all have some standing. They're not average people, but they're not pure devotees necessarily. And they're asking, okay, summarize for us and for everyone else, what is the essential part of the scripture? Because you, they point this out in the first chapter, you've pleased all your gurus. You've studied all the Shastra. You're the son of Ramaharshana Sutta, who's an excellent student of the Shastra. You learned from Vyasadeva himself. What is the essence? What does it all come down to? Which is important because otherwise what happens is you can kind of dismiss scripture and be like, it's all the same, or it's just actually all about this thing, and take like a really one-dimensional view of it or dismissive view of it. And it doesn't work that way. Scripture and spiritual truth reveals itself to submission, humility. Sutta Goswami had that. So do the sages. So they ask him, what do you think is most important? And he says that in this verse. The most important dharma is that which, anything which leads to loving devotional service unto that source, the Supreme Person. And that's devotional service has two qualities here he brings out. It's ahoituki and apratihata. It's ahoituki means it has no cause, right? Which means it has, Prabhupada puts it, it's unmotivated. Motivated here means it's motivated by some other motive. You have some other cause you're trying to fulfill, right? If you're trying to practice devotional service to get something else other than more devotional service to please Krishna, then there's some mixture there, right? And pure devotional service, which is what he's talking about in this verse, is devotional service which has no other reason than its own self, no other purpose to fulfill. It's not in service to anything else. It's only in service to Krishna. No other result for me. Philosophical speculation, material improvement. No, I just want to serve for service. Apratihata. Pratihata means without break, without beginning, without end, without interruption, unbroken. And this is very high. But if we don't start with a vision of what the highest thing is, we don't know where we're going. If we actually don't have a clear description of what pure devotional service is, we won't be able to get there, right? We actually have to know what it looks like. And the reason why we have this vision is because everybody is capable of it. We're made for it. In fact, the proof of it is such devotional service, the last part of the verse, must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. It's the only thing that satisfies the self, because that's what we're capable of experiencing. Therefore, anything less than that doesn't completely satisfy. Even devotional service which is practiced sincerely, but with some mix of motivation or some break of I practice sometimes and sometimes I'm in material consciousness. So there's this very clear aim. Now, if we understand what the verse is saying, we understand this is the goal, we understand what it means to be uninterrupted and unmotivated, and how important this verse is, that this is actually the essence of all scripture. All scripture is really aiming at activities that get us to this stage or activities that are practiced at this stage itself. Then the next question is, what does it mean for me? Because I'm not practicing devotional service with no interruption. I'm not practicing it with no motivation. I actually have some mixture of motivation. I actually have some interruption. And Prabhupada addresses that. He says here, let's find it. Even in the present conditional state of material existence, everyone should engage themselves in that transcendental loving service of the Lord, because it gives he says, it gives the clue to actual life. As has come up many times, regularity is more important than being perfect, and this is the vision of perfection, this verse. But even if you're not perfect yet, our practice of devotional service is aiming at this through regularity, through discipline, through every day. And so it's important to know what we're capable of. It's important to know what we're built for, what can actually satisfy the self. Because even if you can't get to 100%, the point is, we know for ourselves. Everybody already knows. We actually have our own wisdom. We know when we're practicing devotional service with our full heart, with whatever we have to give. Whether what we have to give is what we can ever give and we've completely maxed out, we've hit the total ceiling on spiritual life, never going to happen. Or we're just doing what we can right now. But we know if we're giving what we can right now, or we're giving something less. We know that because we're little units of attention, and we know where we're putting our attention. And Krishna is also informing us from within and also externally. So what this means is, this verse is giving us a little signpost. To what degree am I practicing bhakti with some other end, except for sincerely giving and experiencing Krishna and pleasing him? Is there some, is there some motivation of like, I'm supposed to do this because it's the right thing to do? It's, if I don't do this, people will judge me. Or I'm doing this because actually, even I'm doing this because when I chant good rounds, I just feel better. And I'm tired of living a life where I don't feel good. It's like, yeah, I can relate to that. And that's a mixture, and that's okay. It's important to recognize it, but we wouldn't be able to recognize it, bless you, if we didn't know we're capable of actually serving without that motivation. So there's a science to understanding what the different levels of motivation are under the different modes of nature and what spiritual desire looks like. And also there's a science to recognizing really experientially what it feels like to be in a mode of service, and then what it feels like to be in a mode of kind of going with the material flow. And there's those little transitions in and out. And it's important to recognize what that feels like, because that's the practical life of a devotee in the material world who's conditioned and learned to come out of it. We're learning about a part of ourself that's actually the real part. It's actually the complete part. It's actually fully satisfying, and it's been dormant. We're not expert enough in how to exercise it in a way that connects to all the aspects of our life. We're still attracted to other things. We still have other desires in our mind. The anartha nivritti process is not complete, and that's practical. That's normal. It's to be expected. And so it's valuable to look inward and to reflect on the feeling of being in devotion and the feeling of being in material consciousness, how they feel different, because that's going to help us, because it's going to come up, and it's important to see, where is my consciousness right now in this moment when things happen? Am I actually trying to serve Krishna, or am I trying to serve my own material ego? Am I trying to serve my sense of being really important? Am I trying to serve what I think I'm supposed to be, or some external consideration, societally or familially, linguistically, politically, whatever. And that's really subtle, right? Because a devotee, even a pure devotee, can function like, pure devotees generally follow the law because it's just a good idea. Um, it would create problems if you don't, and it also makes you look like a crook, a bad person if you're whimsically breaking the law. And devotees don't want that. It makes them look bad, it makes the Christian look bad. But that doesn't mean when they're following the law, they're thinking, oh, if I don't do this, if I don't follow the law, I'm a bad person. No, they're always identifying as I'm a servant of Krishna. So it's a very subtle thing. The externals may not match the internals. They may get pulled over by a police officer on the way to a kirtan, and they wouldn't be like, listen, officer, I'm going to worship Krishna, so okay, leave me alone. They wouldn't necessarily do that. They may function with the flow of society, but internally they're like, well, this is what Krishna wants right now, and this is what I have to do. And I'd love to be the kirtan, but we gotta be careful. This is what Krishna demands of me. So even if we have to go with the flow externally, we can see, where is my motivation, where's my heart, am I interrupting my service, my devotional sense, my devotional mood, or am I actually still there? And we can know the difference because we're always in and out of one or the other. We're never in no consciousness. We're always in material consciousness or spiritual consciousness. And usually it's some mixture, but you can learn to tell the difference. You actually can. We're capable of that. So this is a really important self-assessment tool because it tells us the goal and also tells us the screen by which we can assess how we're doing right now. It's a screening tool, right? So it's one of the more important verses of the first canto. And Jiva Goswami calls it the Paripasa Sutra. Sutra means a thread, like a little tiny condensed point. Paripasa means like essential, introductory verse. It basically defines the whole course of Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam, because this is true, because this is the point of Bhagavatam, it aims at helping us to see this. It shows us what unmotivated devotional service is. It shows us uninterrupted service. It shows us the transition from material consciousness to this. It shows us the complete satisfaction of the self. It actually explains that analytically and also gives us the experience by describing the life of people in that. So it's the essence of scripture. It's the goal. It's the means of assessment for how we're doing right now. And it's a call to understanding the difference between feeling in devotion and feeling in material consciousness, and also assessing our level of external motivation. Material motivation. Om Tat Sat. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Now let's take some reflections on that. A lot there in the verse and purport, I think.
So, I'm just finishing up the Mahabharata again. And this time going through it with the thought of the Pandavas and how they're always having this internal struggle of,
what's the Dharma? What am I supposed to do?
What am I supposed to do? And it's all the boys have it, all 5 of them. And each have their weaknesses or vices, and they keep trying to be in devotional service, and they're very devout. But there you could see it crack where even Arjuna with Krishna wanting to go into battle,
right?
Seeing that Dharma, obviously that's the big one. Or Yudhisthira trying to rule after Kutakshetra, and having that dilemma of like renunciating anything because he has this internal material consciousness kind of seeping into what is that way and pushing him away from his divine path.
He was grieving and lamenting for all the loss of life.
Right.
Yeah.
What to speak of the gambling.
Right. And exactly. So like, the Shastra kind of points to that in this. It's beautiful in that where I was taking that in the Mahabharata is that it's okay to have these situations where you recognize that you're slipping into material consciousness.
Right.
And so you have to make that conscious decision to flip the switch. And sometimes you have to really push hard because we each have our own little railways in this material world that we're kind of stuck in.
Right.
And, it's trying to get off that track.
That's to be expected.
So it's nice to receive that. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Yeah, that's why the Mahabharata is organized the way it is. Unlike the Upanishads, which are very instructive or prescriptive. Do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that.
Mhm.
It's descriptive. Because we're it's like it kind of masquerades as a nice story, which it is. It's an amazing story. Actually, I think Mahabharata would be like one of the most epic movies of all time. It would make Lord of the Rings look weak. You know,
Yeah.
it's big, it's really dramatic, it's full of all kinds of emotion, but all of that is about Krishna and his devotees ultimately, and Dharma, and the whole thrust of it is Bhagavad Gita. But the person who just wants to have a good story will be swept along by the drama and the ups and downs, and we learn by that actually. Story is a really, really powerful device for learning. And Mahabharata and the Bhagavatam is like that too. It's Leela, it's pastimes. We see what it's like to stumble, we see what it's like to recover. And that's necessary. It's necessary, especially in this age, because we're not like super philosophically oriented where we could just sit and just receive the Upanishads in abstraction and like be like, oh, this is what I must do with my life. And then just do it. Doesn't really work that way. We're too complicated by our attachments in this age of Kali. And that's okay. Krishna is so many steps ahead of us. That's why Bhagavatam is like this. That's why Mahabharata is like that. And the essence of Mahabharata is, as you pointed out, Arjuna's breakdown, battlefield of Kurukshetra, and all the wisdom that comes from his surrendering. So the sages surrender to Suta Goswami, even though they're very advanced. It's the same thing, actually, in a way. They're like, we can't figure this out. The Shastra is too deep. It's beyond us. We don't have time. We don't have the intelligence. I'm never gonna be as advanced as you, Suta Goswami. Please be merciful on me. Help me understand what you know. And help everyone else who's not even present at this meeting, all the future readers of this conversation, to know what they need to know. And from that, we get this verse and everything that comes from it. So yeah, that's the parallel point, is recognizing life is complicated, things happen, we get stuck, there are unwinnable situations, and that's a time to surrender. And here's what surrender looks like. And then, as I pointed out, like assessing our internal surrender, moment by moment, day by day in our lives, is the active life of a devotee and leads to complete satisfaction. Right. More comments?
I appreciate how you pointed out that this is the path towards perfection.
Right.
And that you said that regularity, for where we are, regularity is more important than perfection. And that, like what you were just saying, again, you were touching on, but that our sort of touchstone is to tap into our internal feeling, because we will know, what is my motivation? Where is my heart? Am I actually giving my best? Or am I, with the circumstances I'm in, or am I not? And to have mentors and supporters that give you guidance and will, maybe point things out that you're missing, and to also look at that inner wisdom and to be honest within ourselves, each in our own practice. Because like you said,
Yeah.
if like, no, I could be chanting more and I'd rather lay down and watch Netflix, or I could be chanting more or reading more, but I'm doing X, Y, and Z, right?
Right.
And so it can be maybe externally so much isn't changing, but internally you can make a shift. And even just chanting with more attention, not chanting more, but chanting like our affirmation this morning about not trying to get something from the name, but just, or like make something happen, but just receive the mercy and love and compassion that's right there every time we say it.
Yeah. Yeah, this came up in a session with someone I was coaching recently. They were talking about different circumstances in their life where they felt like impatient. Like they felt impatient when they read Bhagavad Gita. Like I want to read more, which is a nice desire to have. You want to read more, but then it resulted in kind of like getting this rajasic, passionate consciousness when they were reading, and they're identifying it as problematic. And then I asked them if they ever felt that way in japa, because I sometimes feel like I really want to get all these rounds done, which is not the best motivation.
Right.
And they're like, yeah. And then I started talking about how in another aspect of their life, they're also doing that. And actually the key is the same in all of them, is to be present and to be without consciousness of the result and thinking that I'm supposed to get the result right now. It's like being in that mode of I'm here for service for you, Krishna, whatever you want, you get. Like if we have that mode in our japa, we have that mode in our reading, and that mode in our interactions with people. And we're not like checking the clock and like, when can I dip out? And, always thinking about the future is a trap. So qualitatively can definitely be a room for improvement. And a lot of the time, even if we know there are ways for us to improve, we don't know how to improve. Like
Right.
it's kind of simplistic to say, like, I mean, it's true. Don't watch Netflix and chant japa instead. It's very good advice. And at the same time, it's like, how does somebody actually maintain connection to the material world and still improve in their spiritual practice practically and sustainably, right? Without becoming like a monk or something. Like, how do you do that?
Right.
It takes individual guidance.
Right.
So,
And I didn't mean never watch Netflix. I mean
Right.
like chant your rounds
Yeah.
before.
but that's guidance.
Yeah.
That's mature guidance.
Yeah.
Because if you run the experiment, you'll have a better day if you get your spiritual stuff first and material stuff later.
Mhm.
Front load it. I've tried it in both ways many times.
Yeah.
And that's straight out of Shastra. The acharyas will tell you that. So yeah. Thank you.
Mhm.
I think it's such an interesting irony, though, like, and especially in our Western world, how we've been raised to hustle and do more and do the best and be, be the winner and get the prize and get the straight A's and, get the next thing. As soon as you get a promotion, you're working toward the next promotion. I'm a recovering perfectionist. I know this. And I catch myself in that, even in the Shastra and even in our study, it's like I want the next thing, but I need to try to temper that and just chill and really absorb the thing I'm in right now. And that's a challenge because it's breaking an old habit. It's breaking that the way I was conditioned, right? And that's a daily struggle.
Yeah, that's the consequence of living in a society where the mode of passion is put on the top of the pyramid as the goal. Right. Because the mode of passion gets you out of sitting on the sofa and eating potato chips and doing nothing and being idle. Having a goal and being active and being self-directed and being a self-starter and being like, a go-getter will get you out of that. And then the problem is that it creates this trap of consciousness that you're describing.
Right.
And that's actually contained within the verse because it says unmotivated service, right? Unmotivated service is, well, I'll talk about motivated service first. See, one of the things that happens when we get into this doer consciousness is we're thinking, because we're so goal oriented, we're focused on getting what we're expecting to get back, that even if we get it one time from Krishna, we start to feel entitled, and we approach it like in a mercantile way, that I did the thing, give me the result. Because that's what mature life is. It's like you do the thing, you get the result. And approaching Krishna in that mode is like, okay, I worshiped you, give me happiness, give me wealth, give me whatever, right? And it's still pious, but it's mixed with passion. So that whole exchange mentality is exactly what we were hearing about this morning, about the doer mentality in japa, or the doer mentality in reading. It can apply to anything. And the receiver mentality is this mentality, the unmotivated mentality is like, yeah, the results are there, but they're Krishna's business. They're not my business.
Right.
Whatever I get is just an ecstatic gift. And I get to receive that, It's like Christmas every day,
Yeah.
Devotees who are in this consciousness have Christmas all the time. They're always getting gifts from Krishna. And they're always giving gifts to Krishna. And it's free. And you can only have that kind of relationship if you're not thinking about what, when am I going to get mine? As soon as you're in that, you're not in Christmas anymore. You're in Grinch land. So it's subtle. It's subtle, and it's it's not just you. It's very much a consequence of our Rajasic society, because the society has recognized that tamas is not good, but it's not recognized what's above Rajas, which is sattva. We're starting to, but it's very poor at maintaining sattva, and it's almost like almost absent in understanding how to be in transcendence. Because at sattva, you're motivated by peace and regularity, and it's the right thing to do, and it's moral, and devotional service is beyond even that. But yeah, I sympathize and I'm with you.
It's so funny, Prabhu. I actually was saying that I was talking to a friend of mine. He was asking me about how I went through Christmas as a bhakti this year, and I said, "Well, as a bhakti, I have Christmas every day.
Yeah,
So it's that same feeling you get when you were a kid, but you get it every day. That's it. You're in good practice,
Yeah.
of course.
so then, like, um, picking days to do it more is totally fine. I mean, our calendar is full of that, but
Oh yeah.
giving and receiving gifts and giving and receiving the contents of your heart is what devotees do.
Mhm.
It's an act of instruction. So, but that consciousness of giving for like doing something for a result
Mhm.
versus doing something just to serve is really what I think Tanya is talking about, and it's so relatable. I feel
Mhm.
because we're all coming from everybody's coming from Rajasic culture. It's just all over the planet, you know.
Just that's how this world works, right?
Yeah,
now.
it's so subtle.
I was gonna just say I really love the questions that you put. Why am I doing this, right? And then where is my consciousness right now? And then also when you talked about like this is what Krishna wants me to do right now, like when we're talking about like what we're doing, if we don't feel like we're doing something for Krishna, and then just like thinking about, oh, this is what he wants me to do right now, you know, certain things of responsibilities or things like that too. So those questions are definitely like really helpful, and just to, you know, navigate and see where you're at with each thing. So I really love that.
Questions are the answer.
Yeah.
Ramaj wrote a book called The Four Questions, and just practical questions of that are really good thought experiments to apply to oneself. Like, what is the lesson here? What is my service? How can I be of service? I like that question of the way I put it. Like, where is my consciousness right now? Why am I doing what I'm doing? And I put it on a sticky tab, and I kept it uh, on my little locker when I was a monk. I had little cubbies. I kept it there so that whenever I went to get a change of clothes or put my bead bag away or do anything, I would always see it. And then it reminded me. And it's like having like a little wake up call because
Mm.
practically every couple of seconds the mind is just like going off the
Yeah.
rails this way, that way. And motivation is the most subtle thing, you know. Nobody can tell. If it's very subtle, you can't tell from the outside. That's why the Chaitanya Charitamrita says the activities and motivation of a pure devotee cannot be understood. It cannot be understood because it's so subtle how they're aiming at the Supreme Person for their pleasure. But because we're conscious, we can start to realize our own motivation. So that question I feel like really points to that, and it's yeah, it's a good thing to remind ourselves as we're going through the day. Where am I putting my attention right now? That's one of the
Where am I
questions.
investing my attention?
It's right out of the book. It was kind of cool because I came up with that. I think I came up with that before the book came out. It was years ago. So maybe I'd heard it from my guru in a class, or maybe it just occurred to me. But I felt really proud that I thought of that question because it really helped. And then when he wrote a book and it was there, I was like, yeah, all right. I feel it's like it's been vetted. This is an appropriate question to ask. Where am I putting my attention right now?
Mm.
But it's all from Bhagavatam. Ultimately, the Bhagavatam is teaching us to think in these ways. Yeah. Any more reflections or questions? All right. Jai Shrimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Vanchakalpatarubhyascha
Kripasinubheva
Pasanubhyeva
Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.
Namaha. So we can think about where our motivations are and assess our level of interrupting our service and what that feels like, and ask Krishna what we can learn from that.
Haribol.
Haribol.